Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, May 21st, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I am joined on today's episode by Slash Film weekend editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Brad, it's just you and me today. There's only three pieces of news that we're going to discuss. Not super exciting in terms of a movie news day out there, but the day is still young, I guess. There's a chance that something big could break later in the day, and if that's the case, we'll talk about it next week. But let's get into today's episode. The first item I wanted to mention involves Rangers of the New Republic, which is one of the Mandalorian spinoff shows that was announced last December. That is supposed to be coming to Disney Plus, and buried in a sort of an unrelated article that Variety published yesterday was the news that this show is, quote, not currently in active development anymore. So that's kind of interesting. There's no more context about why that may be the case. I think we can sort of speculate, right, that the show, when it was first announced, this was not explicitly said by Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, when the show first came out. But I think a lot of people drew the parallel that, the show is probably going to be about Gina Carano's Cara Dune character, because in season 2 of The Mandalorian, she's essentially recruited to become a ranger, and the show is called Rangers of the New Republic. So obviously Gina Carano has parted ways with Lucasfilm, to put it nicely. You can go back and listen to our episodes talking about that if you want to get more context there. So I guess the idea is, with one of this, the main characters, presumably, of this show off the table, that Lucasfilm is no longer interested in the series, or at least in its current form. Brad, what do you make of this?
I mean, it makes sense, and honestly, this seems like the show that was probably maybe the least important out of the new ones that were announced, and the one that's probably least integral to any of the future plans that Lucasfilm may have had to create, this series of shows that were going to have interconnected stories. And I feel like you could probably have a new character other than Gina Carano's Cara Dune come in and take that role. Or find another character in the Star Wars universe to expand and include in that series instead. Mm-hmm. So, there's plenty of other stuff they have in the works. It's probably going to be a while before we saw this one get off the ground anyway. So I feel like no big loss, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, just a quick rundown of some of the other Star Wars stuff that's in the works. Obviously, we have Obi-Wan that's coming soon. The Bad Batch is airing right now. Rosario Dawson is coming back to reprise her role in an Ahsoka series. Justin Simeon from Dear White People is working on a Lando Calrissian show, and Leslie Headland is working on a mystery thriller show called The Acolyte. That's very mysterious.
And there's also the Book of Boba Fett spinoff.
From that's right. I totally forgot about that one. That's this year, right? I think December.
At the end of the year, and then Mandalorian season 3 continues next year.
Yeah, man, I forgot about Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, like you said, there's a ton of stuff there, and I agree that this Rangers of the New Republic seemed like the least essential of these stories. So I think there was some talk when Kathleen Kennedy sort of made that big announcement at that big Disney Investors Press Day in December that a lot of these shows that are taking place within the same time period as The Mandalorian are going to culminate in some sort of event series, like the Defenders, the Marvel Netflix show, that whole plan. They're going to do something similar here. So I guess maybe one branch of that story has now been snipped, I guess.
Maybe they could easily just rework it and still have it be part of that overarching plan if they wanted to.
Right. Okay. So let's get into our next news item here, which involves a somewhat surprising new role for Dwayne Johnson. Brad, tell me about that.
So Dwayne Johnson's already in production on a DC Comics movie called Black Adam. It's a character that's kind of almost the anti-Superman, also a Shazam villain. And so that'll be coming up sometime soon. But Dwayne Johnson's also taking another role in the DC Comics universe in animated form because Warner Brothers is working on a movie called DC League of Super Pets. And Dwayne Johnson was just announced as the voice of Krypto the Superdog. And in the comics, Krypto is Superman's dog who has the superpowers of Superman and occasionally fights against other supervillain pets that belong to, of course, the villains of the DC Comics universe. And Krypto is also joined by some other super pets as well. There's Streaky, the super cat. There's also other assorted pets that belong to Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Batman. And so we've heard about this movie before when it was called DC Super Pets, but there was no cast announced or anything like that. It was just an idea. So it seems like they've changed the title a little bit. Maybe since DC Super Pets, that like brand has a little bit more of a, I guess like more childish, like cartoon based than like the actual like Super Pets comic books, which can be just as quote unquote gritty as the actual DC comics.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, not necessarily like I mean it's obviously not as serious because like they're pets, but like
Right.
they're drawn in a comic book, a normal comic book style.
I see. Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
I'm curious about this because that was my first thought. When I see the title DC League of Super Pets, I automatically think, okay, this is probably for kids.
Well, let me be clear. The movie is definitely for kids because there's the comic books are drawn just like every other comic book. There is like Krypto got his own animated series, and there are some comic books and different forms of media that have like a cartoonish approach. The movie itself, because there was a very brief bumper that was teased during DC Fandom last year that advertised DC Super Pets, and it just showed Krypto flying across the screen real quick. And so it's a very traditional computer animated kind of style that will be familiar to anybody who's ever seen a kids movie in that style before. So this isn't made explicitly for like in a grown up way. It's definitely geared towards kids.
Okay. Did you ever see? I think it's called Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
I
Did you ever
did.
see
I
that?
did.
Okay. I have not seen that yet, but I remember hearing good things about it, and that seems to me to be like a DC property that was kind of aimed at kids or aimed more towards kids than like ostensibly some of the Batman versus Superman and some of the other live action stuff that they've been making recently. What did you think about Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
It's fun. It's definitely geared towards kids. Has a more childish sense of humor, but there's some fun little like Easter eggs and jokes in there for adults. Stan Lee even makes a cameo in it, which was really funny. But it was pretty good for what it was. It's definitely very zany, and there's a lot of kid energy in it. But it's enjoyable. It's something that's like not quite as good as like the Lego Batman movie, but not as silly as something like Minions. So it was it's solid.
Without having any inside information, is that movie the closest corollary you think you could draw to something like what you imagine DC League of Super Pets might be?
I'm guessing that this will actually be something more akin to the Lego Batman movie because it's going to be directed by Jared Stern and Sam Levine. And Stern wrote the Lego Batman movie as well as the Lego Ninjago movie. And then Levine has worked on movies like Bolt and Romeo and Juliet. So I would anticipate that this will be something that is a little bit cheeky, but also has some cool animated superhero action.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess the premise is a little silly, but I kind of like it at the same time, like the Great Mouse Detective style, where like there's a smaller animal version of the same human kind of doing the same job that the humans or superheroes would be doing. So yeah, hopefully it'll turn out to be an entertaining thing. I guess real quick before we move on, any thoughts about Dwayne Johnson? Specifically, this is like one of, I guess he's been in Moana, right? Like that's his big animated sort of breakout performance. Has he done a lot of other voice work stuff? Do you know?
I don't think so. I'm trying
off the top of my head. It doesn't seem like that's something that he's really dove into, and it's just kind of amusing because, like you said in the beginning, he's making this. This Black Adam movie where like that character is like the anti-Superman and now he's playing like Superman's dog. It's just a little bit of a strange thing.
And if you look at the character design for Krypto from that teaser that aired last year, you'll see that his voice will pretty easily fit that character design.
Okay. All right. So our last news item today involves the Highlander reboot, which I did a search back through the Slash Film archives. And the first time we wrote about this was in 2008. So this has been in the works for a long, long time. And Henry Cavill from Man of Steel and The Witcher is in talks now for one of the lead roles of this Highlander reboot, which is going to be directed by Chad Stahelski, who is the stuntman turned director behind the all three of the John Wick movies. I think he's working on the fourth one right now. Brad, what is your relationship like to Highlander before I even like tell people what it is?
I watched it in college, and that was about it.
Okay.
I wasn't, super impressed with it or anything like that. It wasn't anything that I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see how they're gonna reboot this. But I will say the one thing that I do love about Highlander is the song "Princes of the Universe" by Queen, because it fucking rocks.
It does. I had totally forgotten that Queen did the soundtrack for the original movie, and I think they used at least one of those songs for like the theme song for some of the live action TV shows that sort of spun off on this. Like, writing about the story, I went and sort of did a little bit of research into the Highlander franchise, and it's much more expansive than I ever thought it was. I didn't realize that there were 4 theatrical movies. I think there was one made for TV movie. There's like an anime and comic books and all sorts of stuff. There were 3 different TV shows that sort of spun out of this or were spawned by this from this original movie that came out in 1986. So yeah, the fact that Queen was involved with the soundtrack there, I mean, I just like completely forgot about that and was kind of blown away. There's a trailer that I embedded in this article, so if you want to click in the show notes, you can get to that really quickly and hear a snippet of that Queen song. So that's pretty awesome. So just in case people have never seen the original, because it didn't really perform super well when it came out back in 1986, but it focuses on this warrior named Connor MacLeod, who is resurrected and basically discovers that he is part of a very small group of humans who I guess have this power called the quickening, which is a force that connects a select group of people to nature and basically allows them to survive forever. They're immortal unless they get beheaded. So that's like the only way that they can die. And these immortals are scattered across the world, and they end up trying to fight each other to the death to try to steal the other one's quickening, the other one's powers, and become, like the master of the universe or whatever. So that the idea of just like a bunch of people running around trying to behead each other sounds a little grim, but to me, I also saw this movie a long time ago, probably earlier than college, maybe even early high school or something, and have not revisited it since. But I remember the movie, like the tone being surprisingly goofy, and sort of like a movie that was like okay, like it knew that its premise was ridiculous, and it really leaned into that in a kind of entertaining way. So I know this movie has become like a cult classic, and has certainly gotten a much bigger following in the years after its release than it did, when it first dropped. So, Brad, what do you think about Henry Cavill stepping into a role of an immortal warrior? Do you think he has like the obviously he has the physique to play a character like that, but do you think he has the kind of like goofiness, the like earnest charm, I guess, that should come along with a Highlander property?
Yeah, I mean, there's when he does Clark Kent, you can tell that there's a certain charm to him. He didn't really quite get as goofy as like Brandon Routh's did. But you can see that he's got a little bit of a comedic side that he can probably bring out in that way. And if anything, him being involved and Chad Stahelski being involved is the only thing that might get me to check it out when this comes around. So, I mean, yeah. So I mean, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I guess the Stahelski of it all means that the action should be a lot more hard hitting and at least visually interesting than it was in the original, which, if I remember correctly, seemed a little cheap, a little goofy, a little fake looking. So yeah, I'm guessing this is going to be like a much more hard hitting kind of Highlander version. So like I said, this has been in the works for a long time, and there have been a ton of people that were associated with this. Justin Lin from the Fast and Furious movies was going to direct it at one point. Ryan Reynolds was going to star in it at one point. So just because they're announcing this doesn't mean that it's locked in, especially with Stahelski being so busy working on the John Wick stuff. But it seems like it's inching closer to the starting block here. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily, Brad. It's it's Friday. We're just going to sail off into the weekend after only talking about 3 stories for now. So we'll see.
I mean, there's nothing exciting going on. So like,
yeah.
You know,
Have
you
a
just enjoy,
yeah.
take a break, go outside.
Exactly, yes. So you can find more about all the stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Yeah, I want to officially put the call out for mailbag topics because I think we've gone through almost all of them. I think we may have like one or two scattered ones that we haven't addressed yet. But if anybody has any topics or ideas or questions or anything like that, peter@slashfilm.com is where to send those. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email in the air. Don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you on Monday.